let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble, of course, where we will unpause and then repause, as is usual, of course, for this channel. Oh, my volume is all the way up. I should probably have that muted just in case. I'm not interested in it randomly playing my video on the side and having to hear myself with lots of echo. We've got to talk about the Rosk decision. A Biden-appointed judge, of course, down based in Maryland, giving a pitiful sentence to someone who literally was planning and actively capable of attempting to assassinate a Supreme Court justice, namely Kavanaugh. This is a miscarriage of justice. They're already trying to appeal this particular sentencing because it makes no sense. You can get 8 years for actively plotting and showing up at the home of a Supreme Court justice to try to assassinate them. You get 8 years. But if you have an ounce, 0.1 of marijuana in some states, you can get a mandatory minimum of 10 years and a felony charge. This seems a little bit morally decrepit for me, just saying. Trump is trying to make an example out of Chicago. We won't stand for it. Yes, Chicago believes that it has more power than the Trump administration. I think that it's just a pile of bullshit, honestly. So we'll get into that. 2 Senate Republicans vote with Dems as Senate GOP spikes bid to block Trump's strikes on drug smuggling boats. Yes, indeed. The strikes will continue until morale improves. The Democrats were unsuccessful despite having a couple of Republicans vote with them, including Rand Paul. Now, he's doing it on ideological grounds, which I can at the very least understand. Murkowski, siding with the Democrats, she's not doing it for ideological purposes. She's just trying to be special. She's basically a Democrat anyway, so her voting on this issue doesn't surprise me. Massive attack plunges Kiev into darkness. Yes, indeed, Russian attacks took out power for all of Kiev for the most part. And I think they were targeting specifically power stations, and there's a video of it. You know, you see a blast in the background, all of a sudden everything goes dark. So it ties into a claim by Russians with regards to what Zelensky said about trying to black out Moscow. And it's definitely seen as connected, and I'm not unsympathetic towards that particular view. Trump to cities, drop dead. Trying to draw a Gerald Ford comparison, actually. And I support him on this because it's like, yeah, fuck the cities, dude. They should be able, if they're making so much money, if all the national productivity really does come from blue enclaves, why can't they fund themselves? It's a mystery to me. And then we'll talk about protein intake. This is a dietary article. This is sort of down my alley for science news. And I will give my opinions with regards to dietary things, especially protein intake, of course, concordant with the article. And then Madagascar is quickly devolving into protests and riots. They've been ongoing technically for some time, but they're getting worse. And so Madagascar, that steamy tropical island off the coast of Southeast Africa, might be undergoing regime change, actually, at the moment. It's entirely possible. I mean, it's a destabilized third world country with a 65+% poverty rate. Yeah, I would think that they have a few problems. Austin, nobody goes to prison for smoking weed. Well, they do. If you have over an ounce in many states, it is a felony with a mandatory minimum charge. Did you know this? It's not the same as here in Vermont or over in California or something. There are large swaths of the country that are still waging the drug war in vogue. Austin, name someone. Literally anyone charged with drug possession at the felony level who has too much of it, even if they were simply intending to smoke it themselves or with friends. Haha, Jeffsky, Sticks. Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado dedicates her prize to President Trump. Interesting, I'll have to look into that. Hey, Austin, why don't you look at the legal statutes? I don't have to do your homework for you, bitch. Why don't you do it yourself? What do fuck? I heard about Morocco having protests by Gen Z, but not Madagascar. Yes, it is in Madagascar, and they are becoming quite a bit larger, actually. Well, Austin, again, you can look into the state statutes with regards to mandatory minimum sentencing. Considering the way that you're acting, I don't expect that you'll be capable of actually understanding the legalese. The fact is that in many states, if you have more than an ounce of pot, or if you're possessing certain other drugs, you get sentenced not for using the drug or owning the drug, but for intent to sell. Should it be happening? No. And we probably agree on this. Is it happening? Yes. Is it common? No. Does it happen? Yes. All you need is one overzealous prosecutor. Somebody go ahead and get Austin some state law, actually, on mandatory minimum sentencing. In fact, I'll do you a solid. I'll do your homework for you like I did for people in high school sometimes. Let me see. Drug possession laws, 50 state survey. Intradasting. Yes, indeed. Oh, interesting. I didn't know this, but Alabama also covers salvia divinorum. Yeah. Section 13A 13211 provides that possessing more than a certain amount of certain controlled substances will be charged as possession with intent to distribute, which carries greater penalties. These amounts include 8 to 28 grams of cocaine, 2 to 4 grams of morphine or opium, 8 to 28 grams of MDMA, 8 to 28 grams of amphetamine, or 0.5 to 1 grams of fentanyl. Honestly, fentanyl should just be outright illegal because it's completely useless. And general possession is actually a felony, actually, in that state. It's a Class A misdemeanor for up to 1 year and a $6,000 fine just for having a little bit of pot. That's not even with intent to distribute, by the way. And it goes on and on and on. I will give you the Justicia page, and you can go through that. By the way, you do not need to be a drug dealer to be charged with intent to deal drugs. That's the whole point. It simply means that you have a certain amount that the government has arbitrarily defined as intent to sell it because you're not obviously using it yourself. An ounce of weed, yeah, it's a pretty good load of green, man, but it doesn't mean that you don't simply have it on hand to smoke yourself. We don't have this problem in Vermont because you can have up to 2 adult plants per person in the household, adult people, and so forth. The Wilford Brimley rabbit. Jeremy's been talking trash about you on both his stream and Discord server and keeps calling you a drunk. Thought you should know, bro. I keep seeing this claim, but I never see anyone with screenshots or with an archive page or anything like that. It's very interesting. So yes, Austin, you do not actually need to intend to deal drugs. The government just has to determine that you did intend to deal drugs. Anyway, we'll get over that shit. What the fuck? I know Idaho is strict on weed. Yeah, there are a lot of states that still are. So yeah, review that link, my dude. Alright, let's get to the news, shall we? Yeah, this Kavanaugh shit is literally nonsense. You're telling me that you can show up to the house of a Supreme Court justice with the clear intent to kill him. This was stated openly by this individual. Yeah, I'm going to kill this bastard. And you get intercepted because there are cops there, because obviously people are trying to kill Supreme Court justices these days. You look at that instance in Washington, D.C. at St. Matthews not that many days ago. Several SCOTUS members were planning to show up, and there was a dude with a tent full of bombs outside. This has been happening more and more frequently because leftists are violent people. They were, in these cases, they were prevented from acts of violence. But in both cases, it's like, this person was on your radar, you knew that something was going on, and you didn't even bother to check into the situation. It reminds me of the Boston Marathon bombing, when Intel, years beforehand, already knew that the Tsarnaevs were radicalized. I'm going to take some vitamins and mushroom pills. We'll get to the sponsors in a moment, by the way. Always take your mushroom pills. 'Tis good. Talked to Cultivated Mind, actually, just the other day. Actually, I think there was another email this morning, if I remember correctly. I will never stop using them. That's what I'm talking about. They are non-psychotropic, don't worry. So, the fact that you would get 97 months for something like this, and he'll be out long before then. Between time served and good behavior, he could be out in as little as 4 years. Brett Kavanaugh will still be on the Supreme Court at the time. Who's to say that this moron doesn't decide to try again? Nothing's going to stop him. Apparently, the intel community is completely incapable of dealing with the situation security-wise. Copium Poppies, check out the new Rob Zombie song, Punks and Demons, just came out today. Got to hear a clip of it the other day before Devil's Rejects. Sounded epic on theater speakers. I like Rob Zombie. I'll have to check it out. Mike the Wop. Hope all is well. Tarl, here's another food fight. Red Delicious is the worst apple. I'm partial to Macintosh, Bryburn, Gala, and Sweet Tango. I'm glad that you are a fellow man of Macintosh taste when it comes to apples. They've got that kind of like, they've got that extra crunch, and they've got that mild appley flavor, a little on the dry side sometimes, that I like. And you are correct. Red Delicious is very overrated. We have an unpopular opinion, I know. Yeah, well, Wilford Brimley Rabbit, if you're in his Discord server and you wanted to send me screenshots of something like that, then I might be more compelled, but I have no problem with Jeremy whatsoever. Don't understand, my dude. I still have a feeling it's trying to put two creators against one another to cause e-drama. I have a feeling I know who's responsible centrally for this idea, too. Trump is trying to make an example out of Chicago. We won't stand for it. Trump is not only scapegoating our city, he's plotting to make the neighborhoods of working families, immigrants, and communities of color the staging grounds for authoritarian force. May I ask something? Who's currently using your city as staging grounds for authoritarianism? Cartel members, terrorists, street gangs selling fentanyl to young people. It's already a staging ground. The fuck? So you would rather have Crips and Agua on every corner as opposed to having a pittance, a handful of soldiers there and ICE agents trying to clean your city up because you're clearly incapable of doing so? What authoritarianism am I looking at here? Hey, we want violent gang members to sell your kids drugs and raid your apartments and loot things and burn, the city to the ground. And that's democracy. Authoritarianism is when some other group comes in and tries to fix that problem that the average person already recognizes exists. The Chicago mayor is loopy. He's out of his mind. And the Democrats, by the way, are out of their mind. This is like a rehash, ultimately, of the defund the police movement. You remember how well that went over. At first, when they said defund the police, it was like a 50-50 sort of issue. And so they saw no problem with it. As time dragged on, though, and as crime continued to increase and increase, all of a sudden it became dead weight, and they started saying, no, we didn't really mean defund the police. We meant reform the police. Now, I don't want to defund the police officers. I just want to hold them back and send in a social worker. I don't want to defund them. I just want to hamstring them completely in what they can and cannot do in any given situation, so that basically they're just going to end up standing there watching a crime happen because they don't dare to intercede. Trump is attempting to clean up these communities, and they're acting like it's some sort of hostile invasion. Well, they're completely wrong. The hostile invasion is already there. This is the counter-invasion. But, they just don't understand this, basically. They just don't fucking get it. Whoops, I think I clicked off of that somehow. Oh no, I accidentally opened a new tab, oops. What do fuck? Years ago, I described Mel Gibson's film plot of Apocalypto in a post on Rumble. I sarcastically ended the post with Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. They banned my account. And that's pretty funny more than anything else. JD 1989. Tarl, as a citizen of the Illinois Soviet Socialist Republic, I'm ecstatic that Trump is making an example of Pritzker and Johnson. The more they fail, the happier I am. Yeah, I mean, there is a hostile invasion of American cities. It's been going on for years, since before Trump even took over his first term. He's trying to counter that invasion. These people apparently believe that the public is not going to notice this. I like to believe that at least 51% of the American public is awake enough to understand the differentiation. Maybe wrong, maybe let down in my beliefs, but I'd like to be an eternal optimist, so to speak. Yeah, send in social workers. When they get taken hostage, that'll go over real well. It'll be a great time, trust me. Anyways, let's get to our sponsors rather briefly, if we may. We have cultivated-mind.com, where you can get various mushroom pills. As you see, I do take them every single day. They give me a boost of energy, they make me feel healthier, they make me feel more energetic. I like them. No foul flavor or anything like that. No gastrointestinal problems, no obvious side effects. For me, it works perfectly fine. And if you have a doggo, you've got doggy dose. So, you can give them the mushroom extracts too. 6 dual bioactivated mushroom extracts in those guys. I really need to, again, cut a film where I go out into the city and go up to random dog walkers and say, look, doggy want a treat? All you gotta do is let me record its reaction. A feeling that it'll be overwhelmingly positive. We have BiltongUSA.com, the land of Anton's meat, and also imported foods. We have Vegemite, Bovrite, Marmite, all sorts of other stuff. Teas and spreads. It's delicious, let me tell you. I eat at least one fingerful every day, just for show. Just because it's good. Tastes salty without having much salt in it at all. I don't know exactly how this occurs. He can set you up with Wagyu, Angus sticks. He can set you up with Kavanaugh, venison, bison. Sticks, X and Hammer mugs, tumblers, and shirts as well. All the good stuff. And finally, we got jamandbean.com. Yes, jamandbean.com, the home of the Clank Blend coffee, the official coffee of Styx Hexendom of Plankton. And as well, you can get other coffee blends. They've got teas, Yunnan Jig if you want caffeine, the Healer, and Jolly Peach if you don't want caffeine. Many of them available. I don't know exactly how many teas are actually available there. It's enough to fill a grocery store. Pretty good. What do fuck? Pre-European Indians were a tool-age culture, never reinvented the wheel. Earliest archaeological evidence of bow and arrows in North America was post-Leif Erikson. Yes, that is also another interesting facet of archaeology that your textbooks never told you about. The idea of the proud brave firing his bow off of the back of a horse really is also revisionist, because horses didn't exist in the continent until the Spaniards brought them. And yes, indeed, you are correct. The bow and arrow, I think they used atlatls, actually, more than anything else. They're an interesting weapon, actually. You've got a handle, and it's got like a wooden platform, and on the end, wood or leather or something like that. And the dart would go into it, and you would hurl it like that, and it would give you you had a distance weapon. So it's better than, trying to run after a pig with a spear or something like that. It's better than trying to kill the buffalo with a rock to its head, because it gave you a bit of an advantage, because animals, of course, don't use distance weapons unless they're a spitting cobra or something like that. Mirfac87 actually bought the dog treat for my dogs, and they love it. That's what I'm talking about. Austin still has nothing intelligent to say, it seems. I mean, I gave you the link. Do the research for yourself. Look up the mandatory minimums for mere drug possession with intent to sell, because you had too many of them. Your weed plant grew a little bit too big, so, now you're a felon. You go to jail for maybe 15 years or something like that in some cases. 2 Republicans vote with Dems as Senate GOP spikes bid to block Trump's strikes on drug smuggling boats. Rand Paul and Murkowski join the Democrats on this. I will give my opinion. I like Rand Paul. He is ideologically more purist than most of his contemporaries. I disagree with him on this particular topic. I disagree with him because successive administrations have conducted such strikes with impunity, and now all of a sudden it's a big problem. That being said, at the very least, I believe that he's being genuine in his belief. He's like, well, this is unconstitutional. There's no due process. Are we going to prove that these are narco boats? That I can understand. With Murkowski, though, it's just, I hate Trump. That's really the only reason that she crossed over to vote with the Democrats. Now, they were defeated in the end by a vote. And, if it had been 50-50, J.D. Vance would have just come in anyway, so it wouldn't have made any difference. So the motion to try to quash Trump's ability to take out the narco terrorist boats, that's not going to be a thing for now. So the narco strikes will continue, at least for now. Now, they could bring it up for a vote in the future. You could have a scandal. You could have an instance in which a boat that quite clearly was not carrying drugs or terrorists or illegals gets bullseyed in the Caribbean, and all of a sudden it becomes a big issue. That is a possibility, and we need to acknowledge that it's a possibility. I like to think that they're gathering as much intel as possible, and the general assumption is that if a ship from Venezuela is headed towards U.S. territorial waters, it's probably not for benevolent reasons. Like, they're probably not dropping off aid for poor people in southern Florida or something, or Louisiana or something like that. It's probably to smuggle drugs, to smuggle people, or something like that, or to smuggle, basically terrorists or cartel members into the country with all their equipment. This has happened before. It's been happening, and Trump is saying, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We're just going to bullseye your boats. You won't even see it coming, dude. And we're just going to blow them out of the water. F. Winters Lodig, the left is now praising Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, I saw that. I'm not going to bother covering it because it's not interesting to me. But it was really funny, yeah. Marjorie Taylor Greene siding kind of sort of with the left on certain issues lately. Supposedly she's basically, Ava Braun. But now all of a sudden they think kindly of her. Because Orange Man bad, of course. If you disagree with Trump, it doesn't matter. I could put a swastika tattoo on my forehead, have a Nazi flag behind me, and be playing Kanye's Heil Hitler the entire time that I live streamed over and over again on loop. And as long as that video contained the message, well, I've soured on Trump, I just can't stand with him anymore. He's just extreme, he's an idiot or something, he's a retard, they would give me a pass. What do fuck? Horses did exist in North America before the Spanish, but the natives ate them to extinction. Lol. Not horses in the modern sense. Not the kind that they were riding when, more Europeans began arriving. This is why we know that Mormonism is shit. Because Joseph Smith said that during those antiquated battles between the Lamanites and, I can't remember the other one, that the natives were riding horses into battle. And elephants, too, which literally never existed in the North American continent. In terms of these vessel strikes, a nuanced take time. I'm unhappy with the idea of simply trusting the government to determine which boats are carrying narco stuff. I understand that. On that, I'm with Rand Paul. But I'm assuming that the intel is pretty beefy. Considering the Trump administration knows it's going to be held under a magnifying glass on anything that it does. There's no real reason for them to take this kind of action unless they're fairly sure that what they're striking is a legitimate target. And the idea of people saying, well, they have human rights, they have the right to due process. Where's the right to due process in the case of all the people overdosing on the fentanyl that they're importing to the country? And by the way, what human right do they have? If they cross over into our territorial waters, they don't have any rights. They're an invader. It's from another country. They don't have clearance to be here. Bomb them. Blow them out of the water. Why should we have to wait until they're in the territorial waters? What are they going to do? They might idle offshore and literally offload the drugs into one of those jury-rigged submarines that they've been making lately. They've been doing that for a long time. So basically you're saying there's no way that we can legally stop them. Well, that's great. It's good to know. Wonderful. Eric Ketting, is that what happened in the Sacred Grove? Is that he was abducted by aliens? I don't even know what you're talking about, man. Let's see. Harrison Bergeron, how many generations does your family have to live in a country to be indigenous? It depends on the color of their skin. If they have dark skin, then all you have to do is show up. You're now indigenous. If you have light-colored skin, then you're never indigenous to anywhere. Europe does not belong to the Europeans. You're not allowed to have a homeland, and so forth. I mean, it's literal. My family, for example, the diaspora has been in the North American continent since the mid-1500s, or late 1500s, somewhere around there. It's traced back as far as the 1570s, I believe 1574, if I remember correctly, at least on the Warwick side. On the Hazelton side, I think it was a little bit later, early 1600s, the Hortons, actually, originally, and then goes from there. And that's my family lineage. I would say after some number of generations are born in the same contiguous area under the same system, eventually, they are indigenous. Many of these areas, and people don't realize this. It's like with the Columbus Day video I made this morning. The so-called indigenous people of the Americas colonized one another, massacred one another, trafficked one another, enslaved one another, and did everything the Europeans did. The Indigenous Peoples Day thing is a mythology that's built out of the Romanticist period of the mid-1800s, and nothing more. The idea of the healthy, proud, nature-loving brave, and all these tribes were just in stride with one another, and they traded wampum and, smoked the peace pipe. That's bullshit. That never happened. It's an invention of the 1800s Renaissance in art with the Romanticist period. It's nothing. It means that it's historically inaccurate in every possible way. These people were butchering one another and driving each other from land to land, taking over territory and taking slaves and all sorts of things. And then the Europeans showed up. All of a sudden, they're uniquely evil. It's bullshit. It's not real. It's not even close to real. It doesn't even touch upon the real. It's an invention of latter years where people are like, there's soot coming up out of the factory stacks and coal is everywhere and conditions were getting more crowded and more miserable, a lot of poverty. And so they imagined a utopian better place. And what utopian better place than the vast wilderness that was then North America in that same period of time, which was largely pristine and untouched. And so they imagined that the people there must be pristine and untouched. So it wasn't until the Europeans, having invented germ theory hundreds of years before germ theory was accepted, decided to infect a bunch of Indians with smallpox. It wasn't until then that they had any problems. They just wanted to worship the Great Spirit and the trees and stuff like that. This is not reality. This is the Disneyland version of U.S. history, basically. I would point out that, of course, Christopher Columbus was not an American. He happened to be from Europe. Oh, well. If winter's loaded, the left wants us to think all the native tribes are singing Kumbaya together before Europeans arrive. Yes, it wasn't until that damn fire water. What do fuck? I was joking. Horses didn't, but the natives ate a lot of things to extinction. Mammoths, ground sloths, giant beavers, American cheetah. Yeah, well, everyone did that because they were hungry, so, that's nothing new. Would have been funny to be around, but apparently towards the latter day of ancient Rome, there were still woolly mammoths living up, way up into the Arctic Circle, so it would have been funny if a bunch of Romans had gotten lost and they see these giant furry elephants and then they try to tell people back home what they saw. They're like, you must have grown delusional. John Hoyle. Iroquois tribe genocided several large tribal confederacies, including the Mohicans. Yes, Last of the Mohicans, good movie, by the way. Huron, Neutral, Erie, Susquehannock, or Conestoga. The Iroquois practice of genocidal warfare, 1534 to 1787. I would also point out that in many cases, the confrontations between those so-called indigenous groups and European settlers were not the fault of the European settlers. Simmering tensions from other settling groups, because, you're an Iroquois or something. Do you really have a care for the difference between the white dude that speaks French and the white dude that speaks English? Probably not. So somebody abused you and then you took it out on other people. And they were joining up with Europeans to fuck over other tribes. And it was exactly the same as back in Europe. This is, by the way, why the United States formed, to get away from this bullshit. It was exactly the same sort of intrigue and enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of politics had already existed there for thousands of years. Indigenous my ass, who cares if you were there first? It doesn't matter. It means absolutely nothing. If we're going to go by that definition, then we should definitely give much of South Africa to the Voortrekkers. We should give it to the Boers because they were the first ones to permanently settle in any meaningful capacity large swaths of that area, Natal and so forth. They were the first ones to settle it. Anyone else in there just migrated through the region, maybe hunted a few things, and they passed their way through. The Zulus were the invaders. I wonder, can any leftoid give me an example of why the white settlers in an area that was effectively uninhabited should be forced out or abused by the Zulu majority? Ask them that question. They won't be able to answer. They don't know anything about it, so Orania exists for a reason. Ovidlu Batita, you should comment on Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and France economy connected with the need for uranium for AI in the future and its impact on things to come. Their currency history is interesting. Yeah, the whole ECOWAS situation there in West Africa and the economic connections that are involved should worry people more. But as far as I know, most larger commentators, they haven't even talked about it. Based acid fox, because it's fucking Africa. Yeah, but I thought everyone came from Africa, so shouldn't white people be considered indigenous too? All we are is more pale versions of a bunch of African tribesmen, right? Well, then I'm indigenous to Africa. You have to let me move to Nigeria and give me special treatment. Could do worse than Nigeria, by the way, actually. There's a development index. So yeah, the strikes on the narco ships will be continuing for now. We're not exactly sure necessarily where this leaves us in the future, though. They could bring up another vote. They could try to tie it in with some other sort of legislative bullshit. That's entirely possible. But for right now, Trump is allowed to target the narco ships. I see this as a good thing. The hope is that he keeps fucking targeting them until they stop coming. That's kind of the goal. And if the ship is coming from Venezuela, one of several things is true. It's carrying drugs, it's carrying terrorists and weapons, or it's carrying illegals. I don't give a fuck. I just don't care. Try taking a little ship loaded with any of these three things. Try sailing into the territorial waters of the average country in the world. Not even like developed countries with beefy militaries. Undeveloped countries. Fucking third world countries. Or places that have a development index, but they're not quite there, like Kenya or something. Try doing that. What do you think's gonna fucking happen? You're lucky if you just get boarded. You'll probably just get bullseyed by a drone at this point. F. Winters loading. Trump has a point. Who is leading the Dems right now? Is it Schumer? Kamala Harris? Is it AOC? Nobody. That's their problem. They have no central leadership figure. They've got the left-wing bloc, AOC, Bernie Sanders, and so forth. They got the old neocon, neolib, same thing, with Schumer and Pelosi. And then you've got some of the upstarts that are not at the federal level, but they're more organizing at the local and state level, like Mamdani and people like that, who tend to be very far left. You don't really have any union Dems left. They seem to have basically fled the party. And who can blame them? You're making your $65K as a plumber, and the Democrats are saying, well, you're basically rich, so we want to take all of your money away from you. And it seems to be what they're doing. What do fuck? Near St. Louis, there's a town called Portage de Sioux, where the Sioux floated down the Missouri River and massacred the local tribe. It's not called Portage de Honkies. Yep, happened all the time. Comanches and Sioux and Iroquois and all of these others. My tribe, supposedly, I'm 1/16th Abenaki. They were relatively peaceful and just wanted to trade and go fishing and shit like that. And they suffered abuses at the hands of British and French settlers. Although the French were more interested in buying furs and shit like that, so that was more innocuous. But they did get decimated by disease too, and shit like that. But the fact that I have a distant ancestor who happened to be part, supposedly, of this tribe doesn't mean that I don't understand history. The liberals would say, oh my god, you've got to embrace your Abenaki heritage. You should be shirtless out in the woods right now, going fishing and, chanting and waving rattles around a fire or something like that. I'm supposed to devolve myself into barbaric status for absolutely no reason. While saying, well, the other great-great-grandparents that I had, they were all evil because they happened to be of European extract. B-list history. Iroquois and Six Nations sided with the English against Delaware and other baby scalper tribes during the French and Indian War, so I like them. Yeah, people say, here's the problem. People have this view. In the United States, this is, by the way, fairly unique. They think of white and they just think of white. They're not interested in thinking about the differences between an Irishman, a Romanian, someone from Poland, someone from Italy, someone from Spain, someone from the UK. They're not interested in they don't see the difference. They do the same thing everywhere else. Africa. Well, you're African, you're black. Well, there's a difference between an Egyptian and a Zulu. There's a difference between someone from Nigeria and someone from Somalia. But they just don't get it. They're like, oh, you're all black, you're all ethnic. These days, it's even beyond just the old racial classifications. Now it's BIPOC. So an Indonesian is basically the same as someone from Togo. Latin America, same thing. Well, you all speak the same language. You all look alike to us. Let us speak for you. Same is true of so-called indigenous people. And they're not indigenous. They came across the Bering Land Strait. There were no humans before that. With the possible exception, and genetic studies are slowly evincing this, that there may have been people from southeastern Europe that sort of went along what's now Indonesia and that area and managed to canoe all the way across the Pacific to what's now Peru. In fact, Elizabeth Warren might have a very distant ancestor of that same pedigree. You remember when she did her genetic test there? It showed, yeah, you're whiter than 99.999% of white people. You are the ultimate WASP. Surprised that white supremacists didn't decide to celebrate her in her extreme whiteness. Holden Sneedmeyer, Sticks, read prior super chat related to topic. Oh, sorry. Let me get back to it. Sometimes it skips. Let's see. Wait, that you sent? Not seeing any that you sent. Russian general was seen with a map behind him that had Odessa under Russian control. Military campaign is advancing steadily. Hope Trump walks away. We'll see what happens there. We will be talking about Kiev, of course. The Wilford Brimley rabbit. I tweeted you proof. We'll see if this is shenanigans or not. I will check. Let me see. IRS furloughs, shitposting, Melania, and stuff. No, I don't see anything on Twitter DM, dude. So I'm going to assume that it's bullshit, actually. I mean, again, if you can actually get that to me, Sticks666 official. If somebody's bad-mouthing me and you want to show me evidence that that's happened, that's perfectly fine, but I'm not seeing any. And it doesn't surprise me. Spike. Apparently a major broker and bank has a huge short on silver at 51 plus. They get margin call. Could have a large effect on the market. Yeah, silver's been going sky high, actually. Quinter's loaded. The longer the shutdown goes, the better. Dems are self-sabotaging with this. It's the golden opportunity to slowly get rid of unnecessary parts of government. Yes, I really want the Trump administration to go ahead whole hog with that. Whole David hog. Massive attack plunges Kiev into darkness. Russian missile and drone barrages knock out power and water in Ukraine's capital as officials warn of deepening energy crisis and rising civilian toll. Yeah, no shit, you're at war. This sort of thing tends to happen in wars. The problem is that Zelensky, under normal circumstances, he could say to the world, look, Russia's knocking out power and water to a civilian population. Most of the people here are not soldiers. And so, there needs to be some sort of response. But that's not what Zelensky did. Because Zelensky a few days ago came out and said, well, I'm going to put Moscow into a blackout, basically. Well, you didn't succeed at that. I'm sure that it's logistically possible. I'm not sure exactly what it would accomplish. But indeed, it was Russia that scored first blood on this particular instance. Personally, I see it as nothing more than another retarded brothers war. Because Ukrainian, Russian, come on, dudes. Can't we at least have one part of the globe that isn't in constant turmoil and conflict? That was sort of the goal, when Western civilization began to organize a little bit more over the last 100 years. One of the goals was, hey, let's not kill each other. It makes more sense. We can just produce stuff, trade amongst ourselves, be at peace, everyone's got everything they need, and everything should be fine. But then globalism crept in, and globalism has been more of a cause of evil and war than virtually anything else. And by the way, don't think that Eastern regimes don't engage in the same behavior. It's exactly the fucking same. Russia, China, the United States, the European Union, they're all engaged in India to an extent now as well. They're all engaged in exactly the same behavior. which should be rejected by every sane person in the world, and we should be collectively rising up against all of our governments to say fucking cut it out. This has not happened, mainly because the government likes to throttle information flow and to keep us at odds with one another. They want me to hate Russians. Some people want me to hate Ukrainians. Some people want me to hate the Chinese. Some people want me to hate my fellow American. Why? Could it be for nefarious reasons? Probably. It's probable, just saying. But yeah, Kiev, I don't think they've gotten the power back online, actually. And there was a video, actually, of the strike. All of a sudden, all the lights are fizzling out and go dark, and there's, like, explosions in the background and shit. What do fuck? Russian-Ukraine war is like North Dakota fighting South Dakota and asking us to be able to tell who is from each state. Yeah, pretty much. I don't have any sympathy for either of the governments. I only have sympathy for the people of that region. People of the world unite, preferably not to spread fucking communism this time. It might work a little bit better. The economy might be a little bit stronger. Avedian Hypnosis is now a monthly supporter. Thank you very much. Over on Rumble. Have a great day, Sticks. We love you here in Southern California. I wish I was in Southern Californian weather at the moment. Let's put it that way. Wish I was in Bel Air or something like that, because right now it's pretty cold out. The Wilfred Brimley rabbit. Quit lying. I tweeted it right at you. I don't fucking see it. DM it to me on my DMs. They're open. Just go to Sticks666 official. I don't have time to look through it. You realize how many notifications I get from Twitter from people that are tweeting not just at me, but in general? I can't sort through them. You send it to me on my DM, or I'm going to assume that it's bullshit. Trump to cities. Drop dead. Yeah, they're trying to make a Gerald Ford connection, because, of course, there was a time back in the 70s that Gerald Ford basically, said "fuck you" to several cities, I believe. I can't remember which one was the first one, the first domino to fall. Ford to city, drop dead. That was the New York Daily News at the time. That was New York. And it had to do with withdrawing funding. Well, Trump has said he wants to withdraw funding from a lot of U.S. cities, as well as sending in the troops, literally, so to speak. Which I support, by the way. I pointed out at the beginning of this live stream, if you want to see an invasion and authoritarianism, that's already what's been happening in U.S. cities, because they are derelict. The people running the cities don't care about the people. They have no good and new innovative ideas on how to handle crime and poverty and drug use and things like that. And so they've been failing. Now, normally you would think they would say, hey, Mr. Trump, we could use a little bit of help here. Can we have some forces and some money? That would be a normal reaction. Instead, when Trump says, hey, we're going to help you. Oh, no, how dare you help us? Invading army. We're going to do everything we can to stop you. In Chicago, for example, they've even organized a rapid response squad so that if ICE ever begins to try to round people up, they will immediately send in police resources to try to stop them. They are literally attempting to keep the city miserable, against the will of much of its population. You think the NIMBYist liberals want this any more than, anyone in the city that happens to be at least independent, if not conservative? No, I don't think that they do, because it's slowly encroaching on their territory. And it'll be just like what happened in Los Angeles during the Summer of Love riots. You saw the picture, and I will never forget it. It's imprinted in my mind forever. All of the rioters are burning the ghetto. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody does anything. The cops will just stand on the corner and watch the blaze and say, oh, I hope someone brought marshmallows. The second that they tried to move into the Hollywood Hills, Hassan Piker's neighborhood, all of a sudden, then there was an army of cops ready to stop them. It's exactly the same here. The second that these people begin infiltrating the lily-white gated community suburbs, the rich neighborhoods, the penthouses, or Tren del Agua tries to take over a building adjacent to something owned by Blumenthal or George Soros, that's the only time in which they're going to allow any form of action. And they'll do it themselves. And they'll inadvertently show the fact that they were capable of doing it before and simply were spurning Trump because Orange Man bad. What the fuck? Major U.S. cities' leadership are either U.S.-hating Marxist or funded by gated community leftoids who live in a bubble. Most of them, yeah. Yeah. I think out of the 15 top cities, 13 of them are run by far leftists. Tomes Esquire. Attorney here and big fan, but you lost that BTR debate. Despite me agreeing with you, you made arguments based on generalizations without sources and came across as hostile and ill-informed, sadly. Well, my apologies if that's your opinion. At least you were civil about it. Sometimes it's not so civil. By the way, I believe that my biltong is actually here, or at least it says it on my email. Huh. Alright, we're going to try to load these DMs. Wilfred Brimley Rabbit swears up and down that I was being badmouthed the other day. I don't know why I'm taking my time to review this at the moment. But we've only got a couple more news stories here, actually, so it's all good. Okay, I see people talking shit about me here, but I don't see Jeremy talking shit about me. And it's perfectly fine if people want to be critical of me. There's nothing wrong with that. It's their right. You think I've survived on the internet this long making the amount of content that I do by being thin-skinned? Yeah. So that's all good. Now, this is about protein. You're probably eating enough protein, but maybe not the right mix. This is actually a good article because it points out that like fatty meats and stuff like steak and shit like that is actually a better protein source overall because the kind of protein and the way that it's actually absorbed in the body is not the same. Now, you can also get protein from other sources. You can get it from beans, you can get it from various other sources as well. There's a lot of protein sources available. A lot of it, though, is human beings are obligate omnivores. We have to eat meat. Veganism is not normal, should not be practiced, any more than the carnivore diet, by the way, should be practiced. People also need fiber and other goodies, minerals and various things you're not generally getting in as high of quantities from animal meat. I've always thought in an individual diet, that's my belief, that is that there's no one-size-fits-all diet. There are certain guidelines that are near universal. For the most part, people should limit their intake of processed sugar. They should eat as little processed food in general as possible. They will need fiber, they will need vitamins and minerals, they need caloric density, and they certainly need protein and fats and things like that in order to be healthy. And of course, associated with this is a schedule of exercise. What form it takes is less important than the fact that you're being active. But while I believe in a non-one-size-fits-all diet, there are certain universal norms. And one of those norms is that you can't get some of the proteins that you need simply from plant products. It is not possible to do so. Now, if you're an ovo-lacto-vegetarian, of course, you can get the animal protein from eggs, you can get it from dairy products. That's perfectly fine and perfectly healthy. Apparently, ovo-lacto-vegetarians and or pescatarians live longer and more healthy than either vegans or people that also eat a bunch of meat. The skew is that a lot of that meat tends to be processed because a lot of the meat that people buy is like burgers and hot dogs and stuff like that. So it's not even fully meat for the most part, unless you're willing to spend twice as much. It's not a good ribeye, it's hamburger and shit like that. There is nothing wrong with some good burger meat. I put it in chili, I'll put it in my tacos, etc. Delicious, actually, in a chili. I want to make that fairly soon as it gets colder. I want spicy foods. I want to sit there and pretend that I'm actually sitting in 100-degree heat in Mexico during the middle of winter. And get some Mama Jeanette peppers, some cayenne, some chili powder, lots and lots of paprika, of course, and just make it as hot as possible. You want to get it as hot as possible without it being so overbearing you can't, taste the underlying flavor. Because you want it to be meaty, tomatoey goodness and shit, That's what I'm talking about. I think everyone here would like my chili, unless you're a vegetarian, in which case you wouldn't be able to eat it. Viking Woman, Darkwave is now broadcasting from its second home, WBCR-LP 97.7 FM, Tuesday afternoons from 2 to 5. Check it out. Darkwave's cool. So yeah, my advice on dietary things is your body generally will tell you what you want and when what you need. Your body will give you will give you indicators on what you should be eating. Like if I suddenly have a massive craving for milk, I'll just chug a pint. I figure, well, I mean it's healthy. Maybe my body needs calcium. Maybe it needs more protein or something like that. I trust my body to tell me what I need to be eating at any given time. Mainly because I know my body is trustworthy. It never tells me to eat like seed oils and high artificial fats like margarine and shit like that. I don't like them. I don't like candy and shit like that. If Winters Loading on numerous occasions said he would lower drug prices by 500 to 1,000%. Does he mean that relative to Canada or Europe's prices it would come down 1,000%, or is it just one of his exaggeration gaffes? I don't know, probably the latter in that case. Ah, King of Biltong! Good morning, everyone. Stuck in traffic since Anton has showed up. That means we need to take another hit of Vegemite. We must do it. The Wilfred Brimley Rabbit. That's Jeremy's server. Yeah, but I don't see the quartering bad-mouthing me. I see a handful of random people doing so. Well, they can say whatever the hell they want. I don't care. I'm sure people on groups and so forth dedicated to me have bad-mouthed other creators. It doesn't mean it's my opinion. It means it's theirs. The Dead Knight Tiger. You can get free protein at the Glory Hole. That's an old joke. Aquafan. Interesting that you call it burger meat. It's a regional thing. I've always called it ground beef or only called it burger if it was shaped into a patty. Not mocking, just curious. They're interchangeable. I just call it burger meat. I do like a good hamburger. In fact, I had one last night with some tater tots. It was delicious, by the way. I like tater tots. Just saying. I know, yeah, it's empty starches with virtually no nutritional capabilities beyond mere calories, but once in a while it's okay. I tend to eat healthy. Not sure exactly what I'm eating tonight. Not sure exactly what I'm eating tomorrow either. Preferably something healthy. I like to make loaded salad and I get a bunch of protein from egg and avocado, actually. I like eggs. Just saying. And then we got to turn to Madagascar, actually. Looks like they might be undergoing some sort of a revolution, actually. The Gen Z anti-government movement there has spread out from initially a fairly small number of people in one city to multiple other townships and cities and is growing, actually, in size. The president there calling it a coup attempt. Here's what could happen. It could go Haiti mode. Now, Madagascar has a very, very low development index. Most of the population is below the international poverty line. The vast majority of them, a supermajority. It has very little development. You've got very little in the way of public services. They've got rolling blackouts, water shortages, the whole 9 yards. As well as destabilization. Right now, they're suffering under a bunch of looting as well, among other things. It is not necessarily clear that the government is going to be able to maintain control of the situation. This happened in Haiti. Of course, the Haitians rose up. They cast off their colonial French overlords and said, well, we're free now. And then what happened? Did Haiti get better or worse? It got worse, and it stayed that way. I have a feeling that in Madagascar, you're going to have possibly a similar situation. Madagascar actually had been colonized too. When they realized that it was full of plague and there was nothing there, eventually they wandered off, I suppose. Copium poppies. They have this stuff at Winco they call taco meat. It's basically the shit they use to make hamburger, but less ground up. It can be used for anything with hamburger or chopped steak. Great for cheesesteak. Never heard of a Winco. Must be some sort of store in your area. F. Winters Loading. Sticks. If I gave you $2 million, would you choose to travel to Gaza or eastern Ukraine for 1 month? Oh yeah, for $2 million, absolutely. Probably go to Gaza. You know, $2 million would buy you a lot of stuff there. And of course, for that amount of money, you could always hire like a dozen armed guards and spend a very, very small proportion of what you actually had on hand, so it wouldn't really make a difference. Also, nice climate, Gaza. You know, warm, well, warmish, you know, desert climate. And I'm good at growing things, so maybe I could, I don't know, buy an olive farm or something like that. Yeah, Haiti, after they gained liberation, they had nothing but problems. Why do I feel like Madagascar, in the wake of its own liberation struggle, is suffering the same basic fate? And why is it always countries that were run by the French, unless it happens to be the worst is run by the Belgians back in the colonial era? You look at the Belgian Congo and Leopold and the rest of Europe, they took a look at what he was doing with the whole hand removal thing, using literal dried hands as currency, actually, to an extent. And they said, holy shit, you are one fucked up motherfucker. And he was condemned even by the other colonial powers. The Belgians, Jesus. If Winter's loaded, the $2 million would be awarded after you return to the U.S. Okay, well then I just grabbed my cash on hand. I would still hire a couple of, Palestinian dudes as security. I wouldn't mind actually seeing that part of the world. It's just it's so continuously destabilized. You go to Israel, and you're not Jewish, right? So then you get spit on and chased around by rabbis and shit like that. Like, this actually happens if you try to go into certain areas. If you're not in the touristy part of Jerusalem, and you're clearly not Orthodox Jew, you can be assaulted and shit. You go over to Gaza, you might get hit by a bomb. Hamas might take you hostage. You might end up used for ransom or something. So it's like, again, it's not the Holy Land, it's the land full of holes. Tarred and feathered. Most cinnamon comes from Madagascar. Yeah, they should capitalize upon that. That could be lucrative. Everyone likes cinnamon. Well, most people do. Tarred and feathered. If you kiss the wall, they won't chase you around anymore. Yeah, I'm not kissing any magical walls. I don't believe in silly superstitions. Especially when it's actually the wall of an old Roman fortification, has absolutely nothing to do with Judaism whatsoever. There's a lot of revisionism in that area, like Al-Aqsa, for example, was the result of a civic struggle between two Islamic groups, and has nothing to do with the original Al-Aqsa, but it's guaranteed by Israeli security anyway, along with the Dome of the Rock. And the fact is that basically the Jews and the Muslims are fighting over Roman remains, which is hysterical. They're both committing heresy, ironically, against their own religions. Yep, it's nothing more than a Roman ruin. Sam J, thanks for the daily entertainment. You're very welcome. Many more days of entertainment to come. Yeah, did you hear that? The Dome of the Rock is sitting on top of a Roman fortification. The Jews didn't build that. Neither did the Muslims. And Al-Aqsa has nothing to do with the original Al-Aqsa. They're fighting over a pagan site more than anything else, which is absolutely hysterical to me. Then when the Romans said, oh, we'll rebuild the Temple Mount temple and everything else, the Jews told them no, because it would be, I can't remember which one. Wasn't that Julian the Apostate, actually? I can't remember. I believe it was Julian, but I'm not 100% sure. And in the end, they said no, because, Goyim were not allowed to build it. One-man armies, Pirate Dan. Astix ended up researching Gnosticism after dabbling in Shintoism. Ended up joining the furry community and met some libertarian furs. Interesting. Yeah, Shinto is pretty cool to study. It's not something that I would be really into, but it's definitely something. I think I edited one work on Shinto at one point years ago. I think. I know I branched out into editing a bunch of stuff from Eastern Asia, and I think Shintoism was one of them. There's one with mainly Lao Tse v. Confucius and sort of the competing ideologies. There's the broad overview of Buddhism, and then Theosophy sort of leans into Hinduism and Buddhism, so there are those. There was one other, and it was on, I think, the Superstitions of Japan, actually, if I remember correctly. I can't remember the title of it. Really good book, though. They had like the light festival where they would float the lamps out to sea and this gave omens and stuff. Pretty cool stuff. Copium poppies. You would love Winko, especially their bulk food section. Perfect for prepping. It's only on the West Coast, but it's basically like a Temu version of Costco and Walmart hybridized. Interesting. Yeah, I'd probably like it for the bulk food, I guess. King of Biltong! Did you know we also specialize in imported food and candies? Check out Biltong USA for a great selection of imported food. And, of course, Biltong. www.biltongusa.com. Code STICKS for 10% off all Biltong. Delicious. Yeah, I think that your package has already come, but I'm on the live stream, so I can't requisition it quite yet. Couple of minutes, you know. I can wait. I'm patient. Based acid fox. Pagans are idiots. What do you define as pagan? Outside of the people of the book, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, I don't think that I'm an idiot. Do you? Because I am a pagan. One could say that anyone that is substantially religious in the organized sense is an idiot. I certainly would. Don't care if you believe in Jesus and go to church. You believe in Muhammad and think that his way is the law, you go to a mosque. You're a Jew, you go to the synagogue and pray and stuff. Who cares? Not my problem, not my business, you do you. As far as my own path, I have no organized religion. I'm not joining some fucking coven. I'm not joining some fucking convent of other pagans because they're going to have different views than me. And so I don't have to respect their views. So in order not to inconvenience them or myself in trying to have to explain myself, I simply avoid them. Pagans worship creation, not the creator. They are like the people of the cave, seeking a shadow and thinking it is the source. False, actually. Because I don't believe in the singular creator that you happen to believe in. So, I reject the argument out of hand. So, then we're right back where we started. You can debate it for 100 years. People in general have been debating it for thousands and thousands of years. And it never leads anywhere, and nothing matters. If as above, so below, as below, so above, is one thing that I would say. The Wilfred Brimley Rabbit. Why do you always suck up to Poopy Pants Hambly? Well, because you haven't given me any evidence that he's badmouthed me. So why would I badmouth the dude? It's not sucking up to him, it's simply not throwing him under the bus for absolutely no reason. And I don't understand why the quartering is such a huge fixture in the chat on my channel. This is Sticks Hexenhammer 666. This is not the quartering. I don't do e-drama. Unless it happens to deal with, like, Hassan Piker abusing his dog. I wonder if he sexually abuses it, too. It's always possible. That would be funny. He's like, come here, Fluffy. I guess his dog's name is Kaya. Come here, Kaya. There, those spread cheeks, yeah. I'm not going to do it in the vagina, though. That's haram, so I'll have to do it in the ass. Hassan Piker's one sick motherfucker. Sam W. Hassan Piker a woman now? Oh, I figured his dog was female based on the name. I don't know. I don't give a shit. If it's male, woe unto the dog, because he probably, after the incident, he got so mad he stuck the electroshock collar on its dick, maybe. Aquafan, crazy to call a pagan an idiot. You are intelligent, but I see you as lost and loved by God in need of Christ. If I call you an idiot, I push you away. Lost does not equal stupid. Respond in love. Don't worry about it. I've heard worse. Because I know that I'm not an idiot, so others' judgment on the subject means relatively less. I prefer to think of myself as an enlightened pagan, at the very least. I'm not interested in organized religion. And I became apatheistic because there's no way to tell whether there's any divine creator, what its form is, what it wants, or if it gives a shit. So, it's all good. Yeah, the Duck Knight, that actually is a good point. I've never seen Hassan Piker smile in one of his streams. He's just constantly irate. He's angry at literally everything in the world, while doing nothing to improve it, I would point out. He doesn't tell his audience, as I do, hey, you want the world to be a better place? Well then, build a new skill, uplift yourself, help somebody else out if you can, drop a vice, again, improve yourself and society in general. What's wrong with that? I would think that'd be a unifying message. But there will be someone out there who chastises that message and gives me shit for it. Like when I tell people that are like white nationalists, I'll say, you're talking about the death of the white race and demographic replacement stuff, and so I'm like, no, it's an easy solution. You should just fuck more. You should have a lot of white babies, and raise them up. Well, we can't do that. That's unreasonable. Yeah, no, it's much more reasonable to just go on a rampage and start killing minorities. Come on, give me a break, dude. Seriously, that's your message? It's unreasonable for me to fuck. Perfectly reasonable for me to try to encourage others to take up arms and kill the black man or something. I didn't understand at first when I put out my first video on self-improvement and on that particular issue on white genocide and stuff. I didn't expect such a backlash from it. I figured that people were reasonable enough to understand what I was saying. 90% of them, they just completely ignored it. Punk Puppet. People against good and normalcy. Yeah, no, that's not what pagan means. It just means that I reject whatever god you happen to be proffering. I'd be a pagan to Hindus, too. I don't believe in the Hindu pantheon. Have an, understanding of it. I have an appreciation for some of their teachings and the things they do, especially the Agori, actually, which is hysterical. Same with Christianity, Islam, Judaism, name it. It doesn't matter what it is. But that doesn't mean that I want to join a religion. Not interested. Andy, who are these supposed white nationalists you talk to who advocate for not having babies? No, what I'm saying is that when you say there's an easy solution to your demographic displacement, which is to fuck like rabbits, they say that that's impossible to do. And instead say, no, you should be taking up a rifle and killing this N-word over here. And stuff like that. Which one really sounds more doable? Well, when you answer that question honestly, then I don't think that they have any complaints to be made about me. King of Biltong, I believe people should believe in what works for them. I also believe they should not force me to do what works for them. If you are happy, I am happy. Just don't force your happiness onto me. Exactly. Yeah, I'm a proud pagan, but I don't believe in any specific deity or pantheon of deities or anything like that. I just do my thing. I practice magic. I like books, It's funny when people who have read fewer books than I've written try to lecture me on religious issues. This happens by multiple religions, by the way. You remember that Destiny cult? It was this weird cult, and it was led by some dude who kind of acted like Anton LaVey, but he's like this old, bald, fat dude. And then they had this chick that shaved her head. This is in South Africa, by the way, Anton. The Destiny cult. And they had like a ranch down there, and she would shave her head and pretend to channel like the spirits of the dead. And she was pretending to be Aleister Crowley and like all of these other people. And there was this one bald black. Apparently, they all shaved their heads too. It's a cult of some sort. I don't know if they're still active. And there was this black dude, and he would try to raid other channels with bots, with like burner accounts to try to downvote their videos if you said anything bad about their cult at all. And me and some others got together and just laid rampage to their content to the point where they were trying to like block all of us and stuff like that. They were downvoted into oblivion. Pretty much disappeared, but back in the 2000s it was, kind of a thing. The cults and the smaller religions really got into the YouTube thing a lot earlier than a lot of others. Like the biggest one that got in on it early was really Mormonism more than anything else. But, yeah, I wonder, do they still exist at all? I wonder. Yeah, founded by Bernard Poolman. I guess. Yeah, Sinet Spies, the interdimensional portal. Yes, this is real stuff. This is a cult that I interacted with. Served as the group's mouthpiece and was referred to as an interdimensional portal. Spies appeared in thousands of YouTube videos discussing the group's concepts. I'm not sure if they're still active. I'll have to look this up. The group claims to offer what has really been going on in the afterlife and on Earth. Its teachings are a collection of self-help psychology, New Age philosophy, spooky woo, conspiracy theories, and occultism, which the group repackages and labels as equality. That should be a red flag term, by the way, for a so-called religious group. Goal. Destiny's long-term goals include building a self-sustaining community and spreading its teachings through educational courses, media, and training. They are definitely a cult. The idea that they've been able to mind control people is probably somewhat spurious because in my interactions, I never found any of these people to be particularly intelligent. But, yeah, I'm going to have to look that up later. I'm going to keep that tab open and maybe I'll talk about it tomorrow. B-list history. I've read plenty of books, but that part doesn't matter. The simple shall confound the wise. Rely on God and all things will fall into place for his plan of love. Rely on self and all will be vanity. I do rely on myself. That's why I don't need to rely on a God. I've been using the moniker I am God since I first started making YouTube videos. There's a reason for that. Anyways, though, I'm going to go offline here because I need to check up on news for tomorrow. Of course, I don't live stream on the weekends, so I'm just going to check up for the mains there. And I do have to do some more writing. I am getting on through Morbid Stories 2. Quick update. That one is going to be parsed apart from the sarcastic ads. That'll be released separately as a shorter work, 100 pages or something like that. It's basically like, imagine reading a newspaper with ads in it, but the ads are actually honest. And telling you, yeah, this product might give you cancer, but there are, fringe benefits to that and stuff like that. And so I'm probably going to plow away at some of those later too. But right now I'm writing Morbid Stories 2. I'm half of the way through the Filthy Folios. Then I've got macabre manuscripts and violent volumes to do as well. And then, of course, there will be more morbid haikus because, they're just amusing to me. I'm having a great time, by the way, doing these. This is the sort of thing I wanted to write more instead of just editing. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, I will, Doug, tell Morbid Story. I will read you a couple of Morbid stories in the future. Don't worry. I'll give you a teaser. But it's going to be 355 pages long, so this is definitely a full-length work. And this is something that I wrote. This is not something that I edited. It's meant to be splatterpunk. It's basically an overmodulated version of horror writing, actually. So yeah, I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to end up writing things about morbidity. I can't remember what the next one was, though. I did 3 the other day and 3 the day before that, so, since they're 3 pages apiece, we're steaming ahead. So yeah, that's about all. Peace out.